All right, so glad you're online. If you're online, give me a thumbs up with this question, but I want to ask all of you in this room, any Swifties in the house? Swifties? Any guys be willing to admit you're a Swiftie and you like it? You're proud of it? Not one of you in this room, huh? Okay, I respect it. Well, anyways, so my daughter, obviously, she's a freshman in college. She's a Swiftie, loves her. And we were talking, and we've had this conversation for about 3 weeks now. But she was talking about, like, being an influencer, which I was like, I don't really know what that means. So she's trying to explain it to me. But she gave me the stats, so I looked it up. And I did find this, so I'm going to assume it's true. If not, it's probably somewhat close. But according to sources, Taylor Swift this past year in the NFL season brought in $331.5 million in revenue. Jersey sales, like public, it's crazy, right? So my daughter's telling me all this, and she's explaining, yeah, because she's an influencer. And I'm just like, I don't know what an influencer is. And oh, you people who are like mid-40s and up, you're with me. You have no clue what I'm talking about right now. For the younger people, just take a nap for a second, okay? Just give us 1 minute. But this is what an influencer is. They're typically large followings, social media. Think of Kim Kardashian. There's a ton of different ones. But here's what I thought was interesting that's highlighted. It says an influencer is basically someone that has a significant impact on their audience's purchasing decisions. So I wanted to share that with you this morning because now I want to ask you a question. If you raise your hand, how many of you in this room think that you're an influencer? Okay. 4? Okay, good. And I did that on purpose. I gave you an anchor that was like probably one of the most famous people in the world who's making so much money, bringing in money for other organizations, other brands. And then I say that, it's like, oh, are we influencers? No. But that's not true. You see, when I was a kid, it was crazy. You know what an influencer was? It would have been like a teacher, or it would have been maybe a pastor, or a coach, or a parent, or a grandparent. It was actually a person that you're like, they influenced me beyond like anything I can imagine. But nowadays, you talk to anyone like younger than my age group, it's like, yeah, they're an influencer. Well, how much are they raising? How much are they selling? How did they change a brand? But that's not really what I think an influencer is. So as we kind of finish up this series in Mark chapter 2, I want to give you a story about why we do what we do. Why hopefully are you here? What's the good news in all of this? And that's kind of the challenge. So this is what it says in Mark chapter 2, starting in verse 13. It says, Then Jesus went out to the lakeshore again and taught the crowds that were coming to him. And as he walked along, he saw Levi, also known as Matthew, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. Now, tax collector, if you don't know, if you're new to this, watching online, tax collectors were really thought of like the lowest of the low. They were, because they were typically Jewish people who sold out their own people to help the Roman government. And the Jewish people hated the Roman government. So just kind of gets all on the same page. They're not popular people. Nobody likes them. Nobody wants to be around them. And Jesus walks by and he sees Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. And he's like, hey, that's what he says. Follow me, be my disciple, Jesus said to him. So Levi got up and followed him. Now, all of us read that. Some of you have read it so many times in your life. You're like, oh, good. He shouldn't have called him. He did. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever. But I want you to really take in just this moment. What does this really mean? And as I was thinking about this, and we started this whole series with this concept, and I want to come back to it, and that is, you have no idea. I mean this. And if you don't get anything else today, get this. You have no idea what one conversation, one small act of kindness, one invitation. You have no clue, and we get it on the screen here because I want you guys to see it. You have no clue what your life can actually be. You don't. All of you in this room. That's literally how this thing works, how it could change somebody's life. What happened? Jesus is walking by, and he literally sees this guy doing his thing, and he says, hey, follow me. One invitation. Less than one sentence. Come follow me. Be my disciple. And Matthew's life was changed forever. You know how much it was changed? There's 4 books we call the Gospels. The good news according to Mark, Luke, John, and Matthew. It literally, he went from a tax collector to writing one of the 4 main narratives of Jesus' life. That's the impact that we have. We have no clue the impact we have with one word, one invitation, one reaching out, just letting someone know we care. You have no clue No clue. And as I think about even in my life and so many C3ers, so for this week I was like, who are some people around here that do it? And I had so many different names. I could have picked so many of you. But I told Aaron and Alicia one day, I was like, I think I'm going to pick someone that maybe people wouldn't think about. And one of the families here, Chris, Carrie LaFawn, one, I want to give them props. They are the original OG. Do you know that? Minus my parents, when we started C3, like way back, 2006, like almost 20 years now. When we first started, I was thinking about this. My wife was in because she had to be, right? She's had to stick around because she's stuck with me. My parents, you know how parents are. You can be doing the dumbest thing in the world, like, well, it's my baby. I'll support them. But you know, outside of that, the only people from day one all the way through, Chris and Carrie. But here's why I really want to celebrate. Amazing family. Kids are awesome. But I was thinking about Chris. I can't tell you how many times people walk in and I know him, like, oh, hey, and say hi, like, hey, glad you're here. Just 2 weeks ago, I saw a guy, came in for the first time. Like, hey, cool, so glad you're here. Shook his hand, I knew him. He's like, yeah, I've been talking to Chris for a while. I can't tell you how many times I hear that. Yeah, I've been talking to Chris for a while. I saw him at Wade's and we were talking to, like, so many things go back to him. Why? Because he's not Taylor Swift, but he is an influencer that makes a great difference in people's lives. You have no idea. One conversation, one word of encouragement, one expression of love, one invitation might change someone else's life. But let me give you the good news. Here's better news. You also don't have to have your life together to influence somebody else. Do you know that? Here you got Matthew, and it says just a little bit later, he decides to throw this party, but he doesn't have his stuff together. And that's the beauty of the gospel. Neither do I, neither do you. We don't have to have it all together to influence somebody else. All we have to do is actually care about those people. Do we care about them? That's the question that we have to ask. Look at verse 15. It says, later, Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. There are many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. I underlined that in my Bible, that bottom part. There were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. What kind? Trouble people, people on the outskirts, people that no one really wants to deal with. Many of those people were following Jesus. I made a decision about 7-8 years ago. I wanted to write a book. And one day, I remember it was a Friday, people at work, people were at school, I had a free day. I'm like, I'm just going to start writing this book. So I sat down on a Google Doc and started writing a book. Now, let me go ahead and warn you guys, you would never want to read this book, okay? You guys, anyone ever heard of Stephen King? I'm not him. Max Lucado, not a prayer, right? I mean, I've got the grammar of a second grader. So I'm like, them dare people said, so I'm doing my thing. But here's the thing. I always heard like, all right, book would be hard. All I wanted to do, this is my only goal. It's like, one, I just want to write a book so I can say I wrote a book. I don't care if anyone reads it. But two, I wanted to really kind of start at about 6 or 7 for me in my life and just go through to where I was. And why? Why has all this happened? What's the purpose behind it? So I get into like chapter 7. Each one had kind of, I thought, neat titles and kind of like chapters of my life and stories. And this really for nothing else. I just thought maybe one day when I die, my kids or my grandkids could be like, hey, this was your dad or your grandpa's. That was all I wanted. But I started writing it and it hit me, I don't have a title. I'm 7 chapters in. I have no title for my book about my own life. And what I did is I started going through all the chapters. And I was reading the different Bible stories that I was thinking about that have impacted me in my life. And I came up with one word that I think helps define me and defines all the people I talked about as I was writing. Unlikely. Unlikely. Why would you use unlikely? Because the fact that I'm on this stage right now is very unlikely. Talk to any of my junior high teachers. Talk to the school that I got kicked out of. You can go down the line and be like, who's the carpenter criminal kids, right? The kids, you squeeze your kids a little tighter when they walk by. Yeah, it's unlikely. I was even thinking, I remember being in junior high and had a teacher in English, Miss Ader. I hated English, and it was a different time, get me wrong, but I remember there was a group of us. When I tell stories like this, my kids would be like, did you grow up in like 1937 in the Depression? But I remember a friend of mine literally was chewing tobacco, and I was like, well, how do you spit? And he was like, what do we do? He's like, just bring the trash can. So then we're literally sitting there all chewing snuff, spitting in a trash can. We get busted. Well, she goes to say something, and I make a smart remark back to this lady. Sweet old lady. I comment back. And I'm waiting for her to come down hard. You know what I mean? Like, literally be that, like, you office principals. And she was so calm. She said, Trent, I want to talk to you after class. And she went on for like another 15 minutes waiting for the bell to ring. Now I'm confused. Because, you know, in my home, you fight, you do all. It's like, she was so calm. She's like, I want to talk to you. But I remember afterwards, I was waiting on it. And I thought, I'm in so much trouble that she literally is coming up with like a devious plan. And you know what Miss Eder said to me? Life-changing. She was like, I don't know why you do the things you do. Well, me neither. Ask my wife. We struggle with that every day. But she said this. She said, you're a smart kid. She's like, you have really good social skills. She's like, I just don't know why you want to live your life with negative attention. Because you could get positive attention. Now think about it for a second. You have this teacher who looked at me, and I'm waiting, drop the hammer. I know I'm not, I know I don't, da-da-da. And she changed it. She flipped the script. What she said was, I believe in you. I believe in you. What's Jesus doing with this guy? He literally walks by. Maybe everyone else has turned their back on you. Maybe everyone else has told you you don't deserve to be back in. Maybe your own family hates you. But Jesus walks in and says, I believe in you. See, that's the amazing part. All of us in this room can do that. All of us in this room right now, all of us watching online, can do that with the people in our lives. Look at the next verse 16. It says, but when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, think how harsh this is. Why does he eat with such scum? Why does he eat with such scum? You see, here's the thing. Religious people, they didn't think, and this is what religious people do, they don't think other people deserve what they deserve. Now, this doesn't have to be a religious thing. You see, we all can get caught in this too. It's called entitlement. What happens is I quit being grateful for all the stuff I have, and I start thinking I deserve stuff. And you know what happens after that? I become ungrateful, I become entitled, and I start to become really judgmental towards other people. Well, they don't deserve that. You mean you do? Yes. That's exactly what this crowd, these Pharisees, they were doing. So much so they said, why does he eat with such scum? I was talking to a guy 7 or 8 months ago, and this guy used to hang out with a group, and I said, why don't you hang out with them anymore? And you know what he said back to me? This blew my mind. Great guy, friends. He said, that group brings no value to me. Now, all of us can hear that, and we're like, ew, that doesn't sound, like I don't think I want to say that out loud. But don't we all act like that? Don't we all ignore somebody because deep down they're annoying and they're really not bringing value to my conversation? Because they're hard to love? Because they're hard to deal with? That's exactly what the religious group is saying. They're like, no, these are people that bring no value to our religious establishment. So we cut them off. That's how it works. So as Aaron said, and I know we kind of talked about, at least you talked about it, video, here's what I want you to do. If you're a note taker, you're set. Just be ready. But if you're not a note taker, I want you to do something, okay? And I will stare at you. I'll make it so awkward. I'll look at you like a weirdo. I want you to, if you would, just grab your phone. Just pull it out for just a second. Just pull it out. Just pull it out, okay? Thank you for 4 of you doing that. Appreciate you. Everyone's like, you guys won't do anything I say, will you? I got $1 million. Come up here and grab it. I hate you. I don't trust you. You're weird. Okay, here's the thing. Grab your phone. Here's all I want you to do. I know people are around you, but I want you just to take them off. If you're taking notes, you can do the same thing. I want you to think for just a moment. We're all going to just calm down for a second. I want you to think about right now one person. One person who maybe you know is going through a really difficult time. One person that you know maybe literally is in a situation and it's heartbreaking and you don't have an answer for it. Maybe someone you know who's struggling big time, maybe financially. Maybe it's someone in their marriage or relationship and you know it's not great. Whoever this person is, don't write their name. I want you literally, if you're taking notes, just write, if you're in your phone, in your notes app, just literally just put their initials, first and last. I want you to do that. Why? Because here's the challenge that I want to give you guys for this week. I want you to make a commitment to pray for that person every day. Pray for them every day. Maybe even, this is bold, I know, but for some of you here, maybe it's even pray, God, what would it look like? Maybe give me the courage, maybe whatever, to invite them to hear good news for once. Because maybe everything in their life right now really hasn't been good news. What happens to that person who's hanging by a thread and they realize that God's going to use you to be their lifeline? That's what he wants to do. So I want to challenge you over this next week, literally, for that prayer. I just pray for them, pray for God to do things that none of us can, to work in their lives, to help them, help this situation, but really be about someone else. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. That's what he did. And to go full circle on this, to kind of close it out, true and lasting influence always starts with people, not platform. You know, as I think back to all the people who've made the biggest difference in my life, I can think of my grandmother. Well, what did she do? I don't even know where she worked. I don't. She was retired. But when you talk about someone who made maybe one of the biggest impacts, it's her. You see, I think for some of us, it's like, well, I don't really have a platform. You don't need a platform. You just need to care about people. You need to have somebody in your life that you're heartbroken for, and you care enough to think about them, to pray for them, to reach out to them, to encourage them. Maybe send that text. So here's the situation, okay? Think of this. So Matthew's tax collector booth, Jesus walks away, he's like, hey, I want you to follow me. Me? Even his followers are probably like, are you kidding me? But he starts following him. So Matthew comes up with this idea. You know what he says? I'm going to literally throw a party at my house. Because if Jesus maybe accepts me, then maybe he would accept all my friends. So he literally throws a party and says, Jesus, I want you to come. I want you to meet these guys. And as they roll in there, that's when all of these religious people are like, we don't do that. That's not how we operate. And in that moment, could you imagine they called out? They're like, why are you eating with such scum? In that moment, Matthew might have been like, oh my gosh, I have just literally screwed this up. Maybe he's looking at Jesus like, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe you're only calling certain people. Maybe these people are not people that you would call, or they don't have their act together. And here's the most amazing thing. Jesus in verse 17, when Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they're righteous, but those who know they are sinners. And I think Jesus winked at him. I do, because I think he knew what he was doing. He knew the whole intention of this. And I think he was letting him know, listen, we don't care what they say, because that's not how my kingdom operates. Keep that up for just a second, because I think that it's something really neat underlying my Bible. He says, I didn't come to call those who think they're righteous, but those who know they're not. You know, I was thinking about this whole week. It's really pretty simple. We either think we've got it all together, we don't need help, and we're better than a lot of people around us. We can think that, or we know none of that's true. See, I can think, no, I got my act together, and I pulled myself up, and I've done all this on my own. I can think that, or I can be smart and say, I know that's not true, because I need people, and I need God. This is the statement that Jesus is making. It's really simple. You can live the rest of your life one of two ways. Thinking you deserve it, it's owed to you, you've done it all on your own, or you can know none of that's true. So as we kind of get ready to close, what I want to do is, there's a guy by the name of Tony Campolo. This story is told. You can look up, you'll see it all the time. But instead of telling it, there's a few years back, my wife and I went to Huntington, and he was at this Presbyterian church. And on a Saturday night, met him, talked to him a second, then Sunday morning. But he's told the story so many times. And I was going to repeat it today, and then I got to thinking, you know what? Why should I tell this story? Because it's his story, and a story about when he was in Honolulu, 3 o'clock in the morning, some trip. And I thought, I want you guys just thinking about this whole Matthew, I'm calling the most unlikely people. I want to use the most unlikely people. But now I'm asking the most unlikely people to find all of your unlikely people and come back, because that's how this movement's going to start. And as I was thinking about that and thinking about the story, I thought, there's no better way to close than I think just to let Tony himself share this story. So check it out.
And I'm hungry. And I went looking for something to eat. And even at that wee hour of the morning, In a bustling city like Honolulu, you can't find a place that's open. But up a side street, I did find a place. I went in, sat down on the stool. There was a greasy spoon, no booze, just a row of stools in front of the counter. And this fat guy with a dirty, filthy, greasy apron came out, pulled his cigar out, put it down, and said, "What do you want?" I didn't touch the menu. It was one of those plastic menus that grease had piled up on it. And I knew that if I opened it, something extraterrestrial would crawl out. I said, "I'd like a cup of coffee and a donut." So he poured the coffee, and then he did this. And he picked up the donut. I hate that. So I'm sitting there, 3:30 in the morning, drinking my coffee and eating this dirty donut. Into the room come about 8 or 9 prostitutes, and they sat down on either side of me. And I tried to disappear. And the one on my immediate right said, "Tomorrow's my birthday," she said to her friend. "I'm going to be 39. Her friend said, "So what do you want me to do? Sing happy birthday? You want a cake? What should we do? Have a party for you? You're going to be 39. First woman said, "Look, I'm not expecting anything. Why do you have to put me down?" And then she said, with a crack in her voice, "I've never had a birthday party my whole life. I don't expect to have one now." That did it. I waited till they all left, and I was the only one left. I called Harry over. I said, "Do they come in here every night?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "The one next to me?" He said, "Agnes." I said, "Tomorrow's her birthday. What do you say we decorate the place? And when she comes in tomorrow, we have a birthday party for her, because I heard her say she's never had a birthday party in her whole life." He said, "Mister, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. Jane," he called his wife out of the back room. She did the cooking. "He wants to throw a birthday party for Agnes." I thought, "Jeez, this is great." She comes out, she grabs my hand, she says, "Mister, you wouldn't understand this because of what she does, but she's one of the kind people in this town. She's one of the caring people in this town." I said, "Look, can I decorate the place?" She said, "To your heart's content." I said, "I'm going to bring a birthday cake." Harry said, "Oh no, the cake's my thing." I thought, "Oh geez, So I got there the next morning. At about 2:30. I bought crepe paper at the Kmart, strung it across the place, made a big sign that said, "Happy birthday, Agnes," put it on the mirror behind the counter. I had the place spruced. Jane, who does the cooking, got the word out on the street so that by 3:15, every prostitute in Honolulu was squeezed into this place. I mean, people, it was wall-to-wall prostitutes and me. 3:30 in the morning, the door opens. In comes Agnes and her friends. I got everybody poised, everybody ready. The minute she walked through the door, we yell, "Happy birthday, Agnes," and all start cheering like mad. I've never seen anybody so stunned in my life. Her knees buckled. They steadied her and got her and sat her down on a chair. And we started singing, "Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, dear Agnes." And when they brought out the cake, she lost it and started to cry. Harry just stood there with the cake, and finally he said, "All right, Agnes, knock it off. Blow out the candles, Agnes. Come on, blow out the candles." She tried, and she couldn't, so he blew out the candles and handed her the knife and said, "Now cut the cake. Come on now, cut the cake." She sat there for a long moment, and then she said to me, "Is it all right if I don't cut the cake?" She said, "What I'd really like to do is take the cake home and show it to my mother." I said, "It's your cake." She stood up. I said, "Do you have to do it now?" She said, "I live 2 doors down. Let me take the cake home. I'll bring it right back. I promise." She picked up the cake. She pushed through the crowd and out the door. And as the door swung slowly shut, dead silence. The whole group was stunned. I didn't know what to say. Finally, after a few uneasy moments, I said, "What do you say we pray?" It's weird looking back on it now. A sociologist leading a prayer meeting with a bunch of prostitutes at 3:30 in the morning in a diner in Hunter was the right thing to do, and I prayed that God would deliver her from what dirty, filthy men had done to her, usually starting like at, when they're about 12 or 13, and then they're ruined and hurt. And when I finished praying that God would make her new, that God would give her back everything that had been taken from her, I said amen and lifted my eyes, and Harry was right in my face. He said, "Hey, Campolo, you told me you were a sociologist. You're no sociologist. You're a preacher. What kind of church you belong to?" In one of those moments when you come up with just the right words, I said, "I belong to a church that throws birthday parties for prostitutes at 3:30 in the morning." I thought that was a clever answer. I'll never forget his response. He looked back and he said, "No, you don't. No, you don't." He said, "I would join a church like that."
Wouldn't we all, as we close today, wouldn't we all want to be part of a movement that is defined by love and not creating boundaries and drawing lines, but realizing that, like I said earlier, Jesus never locked eyes with one person that didn't have incredible value. Not because he stated it, but because he knew that person was made in the image of his Father. And I pray for us as we get ready to pray that you this week would be that love. You be the lifeline to someone who is literally hanging by a thread. Because you have no clue what one word, one kind act, one invitation to something that could be a lot more hopeful than what they're in could change somebody's life. And if you're honest, most of you in here, you all can think instantly of that person. Not T. Swift, but that person who influenced you because they believed in you, because they reached out, because they took that one step. So this week, I'm going to challenge you to be the person that takes that one step. Pray for those people every day. Pray that God would do what none of us here on earth can do to help them. And at the end of the day, let's bring good news outside of this building into a world that has a lot of bad news. So if you would just join me for just a second, we're just going to pray. Close your eyes. Father, as we come before you today, we thank you. We thank you that you always pick the unlikely. And for some people in this room, or maybe some people watching online who have always maybe had that inner turmoil that so many of us have, that we don't measure up, we don't make the cut, we just can't seem to figure out what everyone else has somehow figured out. It's good news this morning to know that your Son came to earth to show us what it means to truly be human. And to be human means that we love, that we make a difference, that we reach out. Because the love that you've given us now gets to flow through us. So how do we find purpose, God? How do we live with purpose? It's pretty simple. It's by us living and loving like Jesus. And before we all get nervous today or listening online, get nervous because you think, oh, that seems like so much work. Jesus gives even better news. He not only calls us to live and love like him, but he says, I will now live in you and love through you. So it starts and ends with your Son. Thank you for that amazing good news. I pray today, wherever we go, whatever we do this week, things would be a little brighter because of the good news inside of us. Help us as we walk out of these doors to be a lifeline, a flashlight, a beacon of hope to some people who desperately need it. I pray for some people in this room right now who are hurting. It's dark, it's painful, it seems like there's no way out. You would simply walk by and call them into a different life. Come, follow me. Be my follower. Jesus, thank you for giving your life. Thank you that we now have life, and God, help us to share that life with everyone around us. We ask these things in your Son's name, and amen. Guys, have an amazing week. Love to see you back next week, Saturday at 6, Sunday 9, 10, and 11. Take care.
I'm about to have a good